Mark, I think you're up first today, so.
Before Mark gets started, I just want to comment that I asked Mark to start, or to be here today because, as I'm sure you're all aware of, the federal government had stopped funding to our 4 resettlement agencies and organizations that support refugees that are here legally and that have tried decades to get here. And then all of a sudden, currently, I think we have over 400, and Mark will probably go through all this. They're legal citizens of the United States that have been relying on this 90-day support from these resettlement agencies. And right now they're in a crisis. And that's why really he's here today to go over all of that. I've been in contact with IDED and some state legislators to see if we could maybe partner and try to get some help. So, Mark, thanks for doing this and
absolutely.
being on top of it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me here today and opportunity to speak a little bit about what we're hearing and seeing on the ground with the refugee situation and with the federal freeze that's affecting not only these agencies but families as well. So, my name is Mark Suceska, and I oversee Global Neighbors, which is the Immigrant and Refugee Welcome Center that's being led through Polk County. And for the last 10 or so days, we as a network have been really scrambling to identify these challenges that these families are facing and how to mitigate them. The biggest challenge we're seeing right now is just with the federal freeze and those funds being able to support staffing, those in the form of case management at these agencies, and to help these families successfully integrate into their new homes. As Supervisor Conley mentioned, these are refugees who have status, legal status, as supported and approved by the State Department. The 2 classifications that we're primarily focusing on right now are those with I-94 status, who have come through the traditional refugee admissions process, and SIVs, special immigrant visa holders. These are Iraqis or Afghans who have worked on behalf of our government overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq. So when we talk about the situation on the ground, it's dire. All services have ceased. Families are not able to receive immunizations. They're not able to receive case management. Children are not able to be enrolled into school. And the biggest problem right now that we're facing is food. Families aren't able to access food. And the reason being is because these resettlement organizations receive funds to not only provide that case management and wraparound support, but on behalf of the families, these agencies receive monetary stipends for those first 90 days to be able to support housing costs, to be able to purchase and secure food until benefits kick in, and then overall navigation of services throughout our community. We're talking about refugees that already have been resettled here, not those that have been in the pipeline. So those who have set to travel with the current freeze, those refugees are still overseas, hopefully or potentially ready to travel. We're talking about some 500 individuals who already have been here since December of 24 who need those services and support. So that's why I'm here to give you a little bit of lay of the land and answer any questions you may have and hopefully come to a resolution to help these folks.
So I know I met with, I've talked to LSI. I know they have about 128 just in Polk County. I think they serve maybe 4 other counties. I'm not really sure. I was concentrating only on Polk.
Sure.
And USCRI have already laid off 4 case managers.
As of yesterday, yeah.
And I'm not sure about Catholic Charities. And the other one is
International Rescue Committee, IRC.
Okay, so those are the 4 resettlement agencies.
Correct.
We've heard from schools that the kids are emptying out their food pantries at schools because they're bringing that food home because that's how they're getting the food. What I don't know is what's going to happen to their housing if they can't pay rent. So we're going to have a homeless population added to our existing homeless population.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges right now we're also facing is this overnight mass homelessness that families might face. And we're not just talking about single adults or small family units. We're talking about pregnant mothers who have been here, single mothers with children, and large family units anywhere from 8 to 12 individuals. So as you can imagine, with the housing crisis we're facing right now, and at the capacity that our shelters are at, adding potential hundreds of more people would bode a great challenge to our community.
How many do we have in Polk County total?
Right now, we have 496
That's individuals?
individuals, yeah, that have been affected by this federal freeze.
And then, can you tell us how many households that is?
I cannot off the top of my head, but I can get that number to you. I do not have that in front of me.
So as we look at the impact of this pause and freeze, what are we reading into the administration's long-term commitment to refugee resettlement and programming future forward?
That is a fair question, and one that's difficult to answer at this time. What we know and how we are approaching the overall landscape of resettlement is what directive we've gotten from the federal government. There will be reviews every 90 days to look at the overall resettlement program, where the funds are going and how it's been functioning with it after the fact of the ban going in, or the federal freeze going into place. If history were to be any sort of indicator, we will see probably a drastic decrease in overall refugee resettlement numbers. How that will impact our local community is that on one end, we will be able to sort of catch up with the overall numbers and the impacts that we've had with Afghanistan and Ukraine. But as far as the refugees that are here right now, that is the biggest challenge we are facing.
Right.
That is unprecedented. And so this sort of ask is a one-time ask to help these families.
So let me ask you this. So typically, I know that the U.S. aid for refugees is really a small amount of money.
Correct.
So what are we talking about? What is a refugee in good standing, new to the community, receiving from the federal government as part of their resettlement package?
Sure.
Monthly benefits, and then what does that entitle them to?
Yep, it's $1,125 per head. So depending on the family size, that'll equal to that amount. Family of individual, 1,125 times 6 or 7. That money is what's known as reception and placement period dollars. That money covers initial cash assistance, a down payment or deposit on housing if permanent is available. If temporary housing is secured where permanent is not, those funds cover motels, hotels, or extended stays. For example, Airbnbs is a partnership that was established during the evacuation and resettlement of Afghans several years ago. That money also covers food assistance before public benefits kick in, and any sort of medical needs, again, before those benefits kick in. So for the first 90 days, that $1,125 is used for that entire scope of services.
And then what does a provider receive, like an LSI, for case management?
They receive $1,125 as well. It's $2,250 per the individual. That's split in half for administrative case management costs or overhead costs, and then $1,125 goes to the family,
So,
that individual.
so.
Per month, they get that?
No.
They just get that one time?
It's for they get it one time, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, to use for those first 90 days. Yep.
And so what is the total package, all-inclusive, that a new immigrant or refugee would receive, total package?
Per person?
Yes.
Including public benefits and all of that, or just what they get from the resettlement agencies?
What are we missing through this freeze? What are we eliminating through the freeze? How much are we eliminating?
$1.225 million.
Okay, that's
for the
across-
500
no,
for the
but
500 individuals.
individually, what is it per person that we're freezing?
$1,125.
Okay.
And
For
that- but
for
that-
1 month?
That doesn't
That is just for the individual refugee, for those for the provisions that they need. For the
Okay.
case management services, for the entire navigation of the system, that are also additional costs with that other 1,125 comes in to pay staff, to pay individuals to be able to provide social services to them.
No, I understand that, what I'm trying to do is get a handle on, we are not the federal government, so how do we help without assuming the entire role of the federal government as it relates to assistance? Because I think us paying LSI and Catholic Charities, and I'm just not sure this is sustainable long-term, and so you're asking for a one-time assistance just to cover the 496 individuals today who are at all different stages of that first 90 days. Some are towards the end of the 90 days, it's my understanding.
Sure.
So help me understand where we're going with this in terms of, are you asking us to assume the role of the federal government refugee resettlement program long-term, or is this just to assist over this 90-day period?
Just to assist over the 90-day period. There's never an assumption that the county would take this upon themselves to sustain the federally supported refugee resettlement program. Again, going back to how this affected and with the overnight executive orders that impacted these families, we're talking about a completely unprecedented time in our history that has affected these individuals for this one time. And so,
Totally understand that. Now, are we allowing these individuals to receive assistance through our network of food pantries throughout the community?
they are actively accessing those, but there are no resources in those food pantries to be able to meet the need. And I think that is a challenge, that our system is at capacity. And so when we talk about,
They're not getting food from DMARC or Food Bank of Iowa?
if there are culturally appropriate foods available, they are accessing those. But if there are not foods from these places that people are familiar with or come from, they most likely will not be accessing those foods. That's kind of been the situation regardless of what we're talking about today.
We're not talking about just, helping the federal government. As I think, as Mark has said, it is definitely unprecedented, and obviously some of these folks that have been here since December. Some are at a different stage in their life when they've gotten here. So they're not all the full 90 days that they need help. But not only they need help for rent assistance and the food, during this whole time, during case management, aren't they learning English language?
Correct.
They're trying to get their job, getting their kids to school, all the other things that these organizations are helping them with. So it's not just, we're worried about them being on the street and
No.
going hungry. It's all the other programs that has completely stopped.
Yeah, that's correct. A lot of the component of resettlement is also successful integration and what that looks like. Job training, English classes, getting enrolled in potentially citizenship courses as well. All of that has had to stop, or at least the staff that has been conducting those are not paid to do that anymore, and they've been doing it voluntarily.
Yeah.
I have so many questions.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a new person here.
Sure.
So, boy, like I said, I have a whole bunch written down. One thing, so they came in December, and this is a 90-day period, December, January, February, right? So the executive order went into effect last week, so in theory, they received December and January, so we're talking about 1 month of funding that we're looking at, which was $558,000, correct?
Sure, yeah.
All right, so then the payment to the groups, the one-time payment of the other $558,000, they would have gotten in December, right?
Correct.
So they should still be operating under the money that they had already received. wouldn't
They are not operating on, because
But
that
that was
money
one-
has not gone to them.
So they didn't get their one-time funding when the immigrants came? They were already operating for free?
They received, anybody who arrived before the federal freeze went into effect received the $1,125.
And I thought you said that these 496 came in December, so that was before the freeze.
No, that was December 24th. Anyone after that is still impacted by the level of services they're able to receive,
When you said
regardless of when they
December
arrived.
24th, it was December 24, 2024.
Correct,
I
yes.
took it as December 2024.
No,
So, okay, so anyone that arrived after December 24 was impacted by the freeze because they went retroactive?
no,
So
they
right
would,
back?
they would have just been impacted, they would have just been impacted by the timeline of events. So the services last for 90 days.
Right, but they would have gotten the money for the 90 days.
That's not how that works, unfortunately. They're not given the money up front. That money is held by the resettlement agencies and paid accordingly to whatever services needed, like housing.
So that's what I'm talking about. The resettlement agencies would have gotten their money,
Yes.
so they're good. They should still be operating their services because they got their money for 90 days and we're in the middle of their 90 days. So there's no reason for them to quit their services because they've been paid.
Their services, they're not providing services as we speak today.
But they've been paid, so why aren't they providing services?
That's a question I would have to ask the resettlement agencies. I do not know the answer to that.
Because if we're in a dire situation and they've been paid, they should be offering those services, in my opinion, right? Okay. I was confused about why would the kids not be able to go to school now?
It's not that they're not able to go to school, it's that they don't have case management supports and services to be able to help them get enrolled into school. These reception and
Should
placement
they have already been enrolled in school, though? Does it
Not
matter? Or was-
necessarily, no. It depends on when they're able to get their immunizations, when they're able to get seen for their first refugee physical, and all when the clinic can schedule to see them.
Okay, let's go back to immunizations, because I had a question on that, too. I mean, like a 1 month, 3 days, so I'm still catching up here, right? But don't we as a county provide immunizations anyway? So isn't that one of our Department of Health aspects?
Jill, these folks have just come from a refugee camp.
Yeah.
So some might have only been here a month and they're still,
They're still in the process, but I thought we already
Right.
provided that, so.
We
like-
don't know what they've
No.
gotten provided or not
No.
provided. Maybe they've been here a week.
And the immunizations where people go to receive are Broadlawns, primary health care, DMU, or Blank Children's Hospital. They do not go to Polk County Health. Polk County Health helps supports a physical that's needed for adjustment of status for their green card. Polk County Health does not administer the initially required immunizations that is outlined by the refugee physical that has to be administered by one of those 4 health providers in central Iowa.
Well, that's interesting, so.
Hopefully Global Neighbors someday will do that.
Yeah, I thought that we did that, okay. And then there was a concern about rent. And the rent was the one, I'm like, well, that one kind of makes sense. I'm still learning about ER2, but isn't that rent assistance that we have available for people that are struggling with rent? Or is that a
There's
different?
certain guidelines we have to follow on ER2.
And the rental assistance piece is done. We expended all of those funds, I think, last May. The remaining funds are what is supposed to be being invested in the creation of more affordable units, not actual rent assistance.
Okay, so
for
none of that money
individuals.
can go to rent
It
assistance?
can, but as of yesterday, the board had made the decision to invest those in developing more affordable units.
So we could adjust that decision if we wanted to?
I believe so.
Okay.
Okay, so, again, are any of our medical providers not providing immunizations today as a result of this freeze?
No, the medical providers are still providing the services. The challenge is getting those refugees to those appointments if they're not able to access transportation. Correct.
Is an issue?
Yes.
Okay. And then, as it relates to, as it relates to food, I'm at a loss as to, do they not qualify for SNAP assistance or WIC?
They do,
They do.
yes.
And has that been frozen?
Yes, because the process of getting people applied for those benefits is done by the resettlement agencies. And so all DHS applications that are filled out on behalf of those families are done by case managers. Those case managers are not doing that anymore because
They're not there.
they're not being paid and they're not there.
I'm so confused about that. I think that's the first question I didn't answer. I mean, if they've been given payment, why aren't they continuing to work? Like, if we were at day 90, I'd be like, all right, I get it, you aren't paid now. But if we're in the middle of that payment period, in my opinion, they should be continuing to work for them.
I don't have an answer for you. I apologize. I don't have that ready and I can get that to you today. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
My question relates to, maybe Frank, you can address this. 1.225 million, as they asked for 90 days, which we have no guarantee of 90 days to be able. Where do we have 1.225 million dollars laying around to utilize this? What fund would it come from a county operations standpoint?
So that's a good question. If it was something the board wanted to do, we would have to identify. It's currently not identified. Supervisor Altringer brought up Era 2 funds. I would check with our consultant, see if it meets that criteria, probably right off the bat.
Yeah.
But it would be something I would just have to look into, see what the right area to pull that money from.
Okay, well, I think we're all alarmed at the, suddenness of this information. We're trying to make good decisions and we need more information. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think that we're gonna have to, break this into segments. I think we're gonna have to look at air funding. I think we're gonna have to look at other funding that we have. And then what assistance already is out there. And I think getting back to Supervisor Altringer on, why services have stopped by service net providers who've received the $1,125 for the assistance for immigrant assistance, why they've stopped providing services. I'd be interested in knowing why that's happened, and then what obstacles they're facing. I'm willing to work on the transportation side of this. I think the transportation side, getting folks to their clinics for immunizations is critical. I would like to know, if they're facing any obstacles from our school system. If they aren't, then congratulations to the school systems for holding firm on this. And then where else we need to come in and provide provide one-time assistance. Long-term, I have significant fear that in light of what we're trying to accomplish with the global village, that if our service providers are laying people off today, how are we going to staff a global village, and are there going to be additional refugees added to our community without this assistance going forward? Because if that's the case, this isn't sustainable. And I guess that's why we need some guidance, and hopefully our federal lobbyists can give us some insight, maybe to provide us some advice long-term going forward, how we keep this operation going under this new world order that we're facing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Melissa, I think you are up.
Sarah, do you want me to take the mouse? Good morning.
Morning.
Appreciate you guys taking some time. I'm happy to give an update, especially Jill, Mark, welcome. I'll give just high level to begin with, and then we'll kind of get into it. And for those of you who know me well, PowerPoints are always my nemesis. Where's my mouse at? There we go. All right, perfect. So Central Iowa Shelter and Service, we were founded in 1992 after 5 people had perished on the streets of Des Moines. The county and the city have been longtime partners of ours on this journey as the 8 churches had come together and basically said enough. The facility initially started out as a mobile shelter. The churches used to drive around in 15-passenger vans, picking people up that were unsheltered and then sheltering them in the basement of their church. 1995, Bill Knapp came along and built our very first emergency shelter, and that is downtown Des Moines. That was then transitioned into the DMARC food pantry and has now been torn down and will be the future of some luxury housing across the street from the shelter. Our current shelter in 2010 went through quite the process of community conversations before it was built, and it now serves well over 250 people every single night within our emergency shelter. Is a one-stop shop for anyone in our community experiencing homelessness, but also generally low-income Polk County residents and Iowa residents who come to get 3 meals a day and all the full wraparound supports that we offer, which I'll get into a little bit later. There we go. So by the numbers, on average every year we serve roughly 2,000 people within our programming and emergency shelter. In our FY24, we hit 2,448 lives. That includes our street outreach program, our emergency shelter, and what's called a rapid rehousing program. And this is specific to Polk County. Also in 2020, we started supporting during COVID 15 counties south and east of Polk, where we do the brunt of our work in doing homeless prevention, diversion, and rapid resolution. So where there are no emergency shelters, we work to really keep people in their hometown so that they do not come to Polk County. I did put up there, just for reference, we serve around 270,000 meals annually within our emergency shelter. Since expanding our day services hours at the end of last year, we now serve around 300 meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is roughly 900 meals a day just in shelter. Doors open at 6:30 every single morning. Just going to break down some myths here. No, I don't kick anybody out of the building. No, we don't ask you to leave anymore. We used to ask you to go for a walk or engage in services. Now we allow people to stay in the building the entire time. And they can stay until 7:30 at night. So they have to make a decision at 7:30 if they're going to stay the night, or we do ask them to vacate so that we can start getting ready for basically some sober living activities in the evening, as well as getting out some additional cots for people to sleep on. And feel free to interrupt if you have questions as we go. I know this can be a lot of information. Jill, Mark, respect that. So please just jump in. Just happy to have conversation in this. One of the 3 things that we really look at is making sure that we're good stewards of donor dollars. This is probably one of our pressing issues more than anything, especially knowing that we're serving so many counties and communities now. A lot of people want to know how much did you spend in just our community, and I'll give some examples. In specifically Poweshiek County, we've invested a little over $1 million in rental assistance and housing and self-sufficiency programs like job training programs in that community. So we really try and get down to the city, to the county level, to share those dollars with everybody. As far as collaboration, we can't do this without all of you, whether it be city government, county government, our social sector, and other nonprofits. Our faith community has always been by our side. A lot of times it's our evening churches, evening meals are served by the local church. And so it really is about all of us coming together. And then innovative ideas. What a lot of people don't know is we actually have 2 patents. We really try to think outside the box to solve the problem. We've got 1 patent on what's called raised floating beds that's going into our agri-hood. And our 2nd patent happens to be on our new social determinants of health app, which will have a soft launch here in the month of February. But really do try to diversify those funding streams. And those are just other ways that we can make money just by other people wanting to purchase those ideas. So getting into some of those innovative solutions, it's actually, Mac, I'll be sending you a note. Specifically, if there is food, we have a new 3,600 square foot greenhouse in the back of our facility. It is our most popular job training program. What people don't realize is in our emergency shelter, this greenhouse in our backyard has become a little bit of its own sanctuary. People with extreme mental health or substance abuse issues find a lot of calm by going out and working in aquaculture and in hydroponics. So we grow about 90% of our own food, farm to table, within our emergency shelter. This program currently has a waiting list to get into it. People in the program can stay for 12 weeks. They're learning all digital literacy, they're learning biology, chemistry, and obviously just nurturing that seed, the right amount of water and sunlight. Today, what we love is this greenhouse is 110 degrees. So if you really want to go out and relax and just soak it up, just head out to the greenhouse. And this is, again, why it's a popular location for our clients. We are looking to expand our greenhouse program. One of the things we've been pushing Secretary Nag on is to actually go help us find a for-profit business to come in and actually expand a greenhouse. We have a pathway for more jobs so that people who graduate for the program can see a future in agriculture. The second part is the affordable housing. We really work to break the cycle of homelessness, moving individuals that are unsheltered into shelter and then oftentimes into one of our apartments. We have 81 apartments, 19 of those are dedicated to veterans, and we work really closely with the Veterans Administration on placement for homeless veterans. This program now has a waiting list as well. Traditionally, we would budget about 80% occupancy, and we've been at 100% occupancy for well over a year on those veteran housing units. The VA does allow us to, when we find a veteran who is unsheltered or in our emergency shelter, immediately move them up into stable housing. And then at times, we will move the veterans from those apartments, 19 units, into one of our other affordable housing apartments so that there's no gap. I will say this is the only program, talking about federal funding, that we have 100% for sure we know that we are going to get our veterans funding. The rest of our federal funding streams are still up in the air. In fact, our USDA food program is one of the ones that has been paused. What they've told us is they're just going to slow our payments. So we are still going to get those funds. They're just delaying it and going through the process. So cost of service. Cost per meal is $6 per meal. Again, we grow a lot of our own food, but we do supplement through the Food Bank of Iowa and through a lot of food rescue from local restaurants. The cost of shelter only, and so this is that 7:30 at night until that 6:30 in the morning. We do have some case management in the overnight, but that's roughly $28 a day. And then going back to that all-inclusive component of what we do, it is $66 a day for us to provide all the case management, all the food, all the shelter, obviously the building itself and our grounds, all of our job training programs that people can take part in, and then access to food pantry, clothing closet, and healthcare as well.
That all goes into the $28?
No, that's the 66.
Okay,
So if
that's
it's shelter only, if we didn't do anything else but provide shelter and a roof over someone's head, it was roughly $28 a day.
What goes into that cost?
Just literally utility bills, lights, having a space.
Okay.
So the heating, the cooling, the overnight staff, off-duty officers cost us quite a bit of money, especially during weather amnesty. We spent roughly $30,000 on just having an officer in the building in the month of January,
Okay.
which we can talk a little bit about the capacity side later.
Okay.
It's expensive.
You said you bring out cots. Do you have provide bedding too, or do they provide
We do.
their own?
Oftentimes the community, I'm always cautious, Jill, because if I ask our community for help, they really show up when it comes to clothing and, in this case, bedding. And so we're actually inundated with extra supplies right now. So our team of volunteers will go through all of the clothes, and then we'll disperse those out to other agencies across the community. Even sometimes we had a huge coat drive that came in. We heard other nonprofits were looking for winter coats for patrons, and so we let them know we had them. Same with shoes. So we just try and pass those on to other providers. But bedding, towels, yeah. Towels are always running out. I didn't realize what a towel could actually be used for until you sit down with the client and see what a towel can be used for.
And that probably goes into the cost of the overnight stay too, because you have washing to do.
Yeah, we wash all of those, yes. We have commercial washer and dryer in the back of the building, and so every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they strip every bed and they wash it. So they rotate through the dorm so that beds and blankets and everything are being washed on a weekly basis. Yep. So requests for funding. We've run into a few challenges over the last year, and really because of the number of people we're serving in the building. In January of 2024, we housed 326 people during that last cold snap. It was during that time that we got word from Baker Group, who does a lot of our preventative maintenance work. They started to share concerns regarding hitting end of life on a lot of our equipment, specifically HVAC for heating, and then this summer for cooling. The building is 14 years old, and so while we've done our preventative maintenance and done the work along the way, they're really starting to tell us, at this point in time, Melissa, you're gonna start, we can't fix it anymore. You're gonna start having some problems here. And so taking their advice, we've really sat back and looked with them on what are those issues, what are those things that need to be discovered, and we started to put some numbers to it, just so that people would understand that the higher number of people that we're serving in the building was designed to serve 150 people, and so when you're averaging 200, 250, and you get as high as 326, the building really takes a beating with the wear and tear in the facility. Even our kitchen was another example that it's actually our evening meal groups that have started to express some concerns regarding, is it keeping up anymore? It's just really starting to hit that wear and tear of everyday use. It doesn't ever get a break. It doesn't ever get a day off. And so just getting and hearing those concerns from individuals that are utilizing the facility as far as the volunteer groups and the people doing the preventative maintenance, that we've made some recommendations on replacing some things in our kitchen as well.
What about the electrical? I mean, you're only 14 years old, that's kind of odd.
Yeah, so it's actually switching out the light bulbs. So we didn't realize that the ballast that we have, because they're changing the light bulbs in the ballast, they're no longer actually working. They're popping almost regularly. So if you go in our building now in our day room, particularly, it's a lot darker than what it should be. And so lighting in particular has to do a lot with security. So we had Homeland Security come down with Des Moines PD and do a security assessment of our building. And the recommendation was to fix our security cameras and improve the lighting, which is what you see in the electrical. Our second floor apartments in particular are quite dark. And so we're trying to get upgraded to LED lights, even researching what's called sundowner syndrome with mental health, and what we can do with lighting, particularly to address mental health concerns within our day room as well. So that's another one of those innovative things that we're putting to the side right now. It's not included in this cost, but it is about upgrading the lighting for safety reasons.
Good question. I'm gonna preempt the next
Yeah.
presentation, but, for the 822,000, could that be our rental assistance? Sarah, would that funding fit in line with providing this, since this is temporary housing?
So Sarah, is that breaking out the apartments specifically, if we asked? Okay. Okay.
So the housing portions, the apartments, like the other 3 steps would qualify? Potentially?
So the 81. So some of this
Yeah.
you're asking for would be related to the 81.
Yeah, so for example, on the HVAC unit, we actually have 3 HVAC units, ERAs in our building, 1 main handler that moves the air throughout the entire building, which includes the apartments, and then 2 other rooftop units that specifically affect apartments and the downstairs. So the way the HVAC works in our building is it's everything. The other component of it is the building was built with geothermal in it as well, and so that's another part of, it's considered heating and cooling, HVAC and plumbing, but even the geothermal lines run throughout the entire building, and so I'm not sure if it's an allocation by square footage, because the top floor, the second and third floor, as well as emergency shelter are all on the same loop. So I'm not sure if we break that out by allocation of square footage or what that would look like, but that would be included in that cost as well.
Okay. So yeah.
So I do have a question on the funding side. I saw that the air funds had $2 million or close to $2 million in interest earnings, which are not restricted for the purposes of funding projects. Like we funded the Econo Lodge in Urbandale with $500,000 on the demo side. So would this fit that criteria for interest earning?
Yes, we can certainly apply interest earning to this contract. I think that's what I was going to touch on in the presentation. The need for funds such as those to support the support services side of things seems to be high for a lot of these projects, but okay.
So, oh, go ahead.
So I'm going to ask the question that you and I have discussed. If not this funding to do these upgrades, the cap, how does this work in light of the decision your board's making at this point?
Yeah, our board of directors has been in a pretty crucial conversation over the last quarter regarding what is our capacity. We've gotten feedback this last winter weather cycle, specifically from law enforcement, that they have an increased desire to have actually 2 Des Moines police officers in the building instead of 1. Which really starts to get concerned financially on program and what that cost per night is going to look like. It's going to escalate.
So that's about an additional $30,000 a month to add a second.
Just during weather amnesty.
Okay.
Yeah, so the board of directors and I have been in conversation. Typically, I would tell you that our capacity was based on our staff's capacity, that the building, we have the square footage to serve. What we struggle with is the staffing, the safety, and security to make sure that our staff want to come to work every day, especially during those extreme weather events. And then making sure now that law enforcement and the fire department are also supported within our building to make sure that they want to continue to serve, especially during escalated times. That is probably the biggest thing, is we're now not just looking at the capacity of our staff, we're looking at our building and saying, what can our building actually handle? We've been doing well over our design capacity for a very long time. We've talked a lot about this. And we're just now hitting a crucial point where it's going to be looking specifically, what can our building handle? What can our staff handle? Can our community partners within our building handle? We can't just look at our capacity anymore based on our staff. It's really at that tipping point.
And you're also running out of hot water, and you're
Yes.
also,
Yep.
you're
So
not
we-
able to.
Yeah, that is part of the water
300
one.
clients, right?
Yeah, so that is part of the water one. I'm not sure why the issue has started to persist now more than the last 2 years, is we just don't have the hot water capacity. And we are not allowed to put security cameras in dorms or bathrooms. So if an individual goes on and just turns on the hot water, and if I don't have the right staff walking around to catch the fact that somebody's just turned the water on, then we run out of hot water really fast. Same with one of our apartments. If we have an individual who decides just to turn their water on in their shower, we don't have the ability to monitor that, but that just drains the hot water tank. And so part of one of Baker Group's recommendations on the plumbing side is they've got some ideas about how they could fix that and build a larger reserve. We have put shutoff valves in all the men's dorms in particular, so they're kind of like if you go camping outside now, they only run for 5 minutes. But unfortunately, that's not necessarily providing the dignity that we would want to provide to our guests. But we are trying to do some different things, but the hot water consistently runs out of the entire building.
How about the instant heat tanks?
We actually are on instant hots. So the building was originally built with 90% efficiencies and had 2 boilers. Both boilers blew up within their first 3 years. So we did the math and decided Insta-Hots was going to be the better approach. We burned through the Insta-Hot warranty every single year. And so, so they no longer provide us a warranty on the Insta-Hots. So we do have to provide those new $7,500 every single time I have to put a new one in, but it is still cheaper than a boiler. So we really do try and be good stewards of those donor dollars and really look at efficiency and effectiveness. But yes, we have 3 Insta-Hots. They rotate when they fire, and then we also have a 750-gallon reserve that has been in the building for 14 years. And if anybody now knows, you're going to have sediment in the bottom of that reserve.
So, one final question as it relates to who you're serving. Who are your clients and where are they from?
Yeah, great question. So we look at the zip code data on a regular basis. We're seeing now 78% of our clients are from the state of Iowa. And that's a rounded down number. It is definitely an escalation of the number of transient population across the United States. When I started 9 years ago, that number is roughly 8% from outside of the state of Iowa. So that is a big increase. We have 54% of our residents are Polk County specific residents. And we obviously can dial that down to every single zip code within the community as well, and that utilization rate by community zip code. So where's everybody coming from? Warren County, Jasper County are the top 2.
Okay.
Outside of Polk County, at least that's the statistics right now.
So who else is helping you with this funding?
So in this particular case, our anonymous donor is actually stepping up. We're actually committed right now with the board of directors to build a 6-month operational reserve. It's actually going to be one of our biggest challenges this year, Angela, at the Heroes for Homeless event, is we want to challenge our community to help us build back that 6-month reserve for capital expenditures so that this doesn't continue to happen.
You have no reserve at this point for capitals?
Not for capitals.
Okay.
Nope,
So they're helping build back the reserve, but they're not bringing down the 822?
that's correct. Yeah, build back the reserve, so once we reset the building and get everything steady again, we've got the reserve to pull on.
So any other community partners that will help raise this 822,000 from all these, you know, the 78% state of Iowa that are coming?
Actually, it's a great question. That's what we're trying to actually work to do to diversify, and this goes back to the capacity question a little bit more, is we're really challenging the city and county leaders from those other zip codes to start stepping up as well, Angela. We're getting too many people now coming from outside of Polk County, and they really have to start paying their fair share and doing their fair share. So this data that we're referencing, I've been going around to meet with a lot of these elected officials to share that story and to ask them to start putting some skin in the game.
So right now, West Des Moines and Clive are partnering,
And Waukee.
and Waukee.
Yep, we have signed agreements with all 3 of those.
Okay. And so the rest of these communities
Not yet.
not contributing yet, but your hope is that they will all start contributing.
Yeah, we've had Altoona comes and goes. Norwalk will come and go from time to time, but they're not consistent for this fiscal year.
Okay.
And Warren and Jasper haven't come or gone?
No, not at all. No, Warren and Jasper are no's. Part of it has to do with Indianola built Heal House, which is a high barrier shelter. And one of the things we know from our research is clients will talk, that they communicate quite well with one another. And I drive that route every day, and every day I see individuals walking up from Indianola up into Polk County for services. So I continue to encourage my community leaders to please stop and to soften that message.
Well, thank you.
I will finish with just simply, I guess we already talked about all that stuff, but it's really just about that next steps with what we're doing to build an empowerment in those pathways. But I think you guys answered all those questions, and we've talked about that slide, so.
Thank you.
I see you've offered,
Yeah.
or you'd like to see us stop by. I'd be
Yeah.
very interested in getting a tour. and
Please do.
Get that set up. I don't know,
Yes.
Jill, go together, anyone else
And
wants
let's
to
do it
go?
together, and then
Yeah.
we'll have to do it first.
I just took a tour with the engineer
My
who's
facility director, yeah.
holding things together with really creative ideas, and
I got it.
he was with Baker.
Brad was a foreman for a really long time in the construction industry. He also has lived experience, a lot of our staff does, and so he brings that passion to it, and he really does put the building together with duct tape and Band-Aids and WD-40. So if you show up with a roll of duct tape, he might swipe it from you, literally. So, but
Thank
thanks you
One as a
guys.
gift.
Yeah, he'd love that, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Sarah. So, I'd let the people up here know, but I have to leave at 11:30, and maybe I can get on your schedule to regroup on whatever I miss next week. Thank you. And because I'm like, have the moment, proud parent, like my daughter made state wrestling 3rd time, so it's been sanctioned for 3 years, and we're headed to Coralville to get away from the ice and get in
Better
there. and
hurry
settle.
up, because it's coming.
Yeah,
That's why I'm leaving at 11:30.
yeah.
Well, I can update you anytime if it's convenient for
Thank
you
you.
on what you
Remember,
missed
drive
there.
the speed limit.
Have the speed limit.
So giving just a broad overview of ERA2, the last time I gave a verbal presentation to the board, I think was the end of November. So Mark and Jill, this will be relatively new for you, other than the written updates that I've sent. Just to kind of recap high level, we received $62 million from the U.S. Treasury as a response to COVID, and the intent of that was that the first 75% had to be used for emergency rental assistance. So that was administered through Impact Community Action Agency. Eric Kuhl knows the rules of that very well, but those funds were expended last May. And the remaining 25% can be used for the development of more affordable units. And at that point in time, the board had then made the decision to use the funds to actually create more affordable units. So myself, Carl, Scott, Brett, Dave, Dominic have spent about the last year putting together the general concepts on how this money can be invested into truly creating more units for our community. And I think we've put together a plan that really does truly create more units. We could have made the choice to continue giving it out in rent. We could have made the choice to further subsidize developments, LIHTC developments, things that are already happening, but we intentionally looked for projects that were adding to what was already going on in our community. And I'll go through, the board in December approved in concept a number of items, and I'll go through those in detail. And just as kind of an overview on my thinking and my process for this, it's been to present you all with a general concept of a project, get your approval on that, and then work with staff to dive into the details on ensuring the compliance, ensuring all the rules are being made, getting all of our documentation in place before we formally approve the funding agreement and send that money out the door. So the only money that I believe has gone out the door is the $500,000 in interest earnings so far for Urbandale. And as a reminder, all funds have to be obligated by September 30th of this year, so we are on an extremely short timeline. They have to benefit households at 50% AMI and under, and we can use it for the purchase, renovation, construction, or preservation of affordable housing. We can also use it for pre-development activities, but we can explicitly not use it for demolition.
Hey, Sarah, that was the second time I've heard that the interest, like 500,000 went out the door, and we had the conversation, could we use interest over here? How much interest do we have on that?
2.7, but that was as of a couple months ago, so we're probably close to 3 million.
Yeah,
Minus the 500?
500.
the 500, and part of that, because I received a call yesterday with somewhat of a sense of urgency from the shelter, I did earmark that 850,000. That's a decision for the board, but I did earmark that.
Yes, it
in
is.
the budget office.
Question related allowable uses, so purchase, so we would be the owners, or we purchase in the name of other people?
In everything that we're talking about in terms of a purchase, Polk County would purchase the property with the intent of donating that to a nonprofit that would own and run the service forever. So we would be looking at very short-term ownership only.
And then what happens if the nonprofit goes under and they sell it? Do we get some of the proceeds back?
That would all be part of the funding agreement that we develop with them. So RSM is an external auditor. They provided the initial guidance on the allowable uses of this. You're going to see a resolution on the board's agenda on Tuesday extending that contract with them through the end of this year. It expired in December, but we just continuously have questions that come up that I want written recommendations from them on. So one of those questions will be developing the funding agreement and kind of what the terms are in that kind of scenario. I think they'll all be handled a little bit differently since the projects are all a little bit different, but that's why I'm proposing that we continue our contract with them so that we can have professional outside guidance on our interpretation of the rules and regulations.
Had I waited for the next page.
So the balances, the total that we had for the development of affordable units was 15.5 million, about 3 million in interest earnings. I'll go through in upcoming slides how those funds have been allocated by the board to date and what's remaining. One of the main projects that we really started brainstorming about when this all came about was single-family home infill. And what I'm gonna go through now, there's maybe 5 or 6 slides on projects that the board voted on in December to move forward on. So these are currently, I'm in the process with staff on drilling down the details, double checking all the compliance and rules and regulations, and in the process of creating that funding agreement before the money actually goes out the door. With the exception of the single family home, since that's kind of an internal project, that one is a lot further down the road than the rest, and the board last year was getting regular updates on that. But essentially the concept was to capture the vacant infill lots that are available via our tax sale and build copy and paste single family 2 to 3 bedroom homes on them to support families who are at risk of homelessness. At the time when we had this conversation, the list of at-risk of homeless families was about 50 or 60. It's up to like 150 now. So this was developed with that goal in mind, is addressing that number of families who are at risk of homelessness. So we currently have 7 lots that are suitable for single-family homes that have been through environmental review, are zoned correctly, have gone through with the city of Des Moines for being suitable for building. Public Works has really been the lead on this process. And we're at the point in this process where an RFP has been developed by Public Works, the county attorney, and the procurement office. And I believe you voted already on scheduling a public hearing for issuing that RFP. Public Works is intending to have a pre-bid meeting at the end of the month. What is it, February 20th, for bidders who are interested in this. We're gonna bid it as a package of 3 to 4 houses at a time. So one builder will come in and say, I'll take 4, and then they just copy paste on the 4 lots. So it's a very efficient way for them to build a larger number of houses.
So the question,
Yep.
again, we're buying lots that are vacant and we're building
Yep.
houses. And then we're turning them over to a nonprofit, or are we retaining the houses?
We'll retain them for a certain period. The intent has been, there's 2 options today on who we turn ownership over to. One would be the Community Land Trust, which is a new nonprofit. They've only had 1 board meeting yet, so they're not anywhere near ready to take ownership. Eric Poole and I have had a couple of really great meetings with Families Forward, who is a nonprofit in the community who already owns and operates 28 single-family homes that they provide supportive. They do property management and supportive services. Their board of directors has already approved in concept like an expansion of their operations. So this would essentially double their capacity to serve at-risk for homeless families. And that's where the conversation about the interest earnings also comes into play in supporting their operational needs for providing the supportive services piece, because we know that that's critical in keeping families in these houses and taking care of them the way that they should.
What all has staff, what hours or financial commitments have we invested in this? To identify the lots, design homes, what's that cost out of the 15.5 million to
It's
date?
primarily staff costs at this point. We've, paid just handfuls of thousands of dollars for the lots, inspections, those kinds of things. So the architecture review probably cost us some money, but the actual dollars that it's costed us so far is probably under $20,000. But Public Works staff has spent a lot of time getting through the environmental review piece and developing the blueprint, working with the architect, all of those.
I think I heard you say this was authorized in December? Is that-
I believe we talked about this far beyond that.
Right.
And the allowable uses for the 15.5 million, you're gonna cover, I'll let you go.
But back to the house. So the house will be built on a vacant lot, that the county owns, and the cost of the house is estimated at $250,000. Will the family that's moving into that house pay for, will they have a mortgage, or will they pay?
The model that we're exploring is not a home ownership based model. It would be a rental based model via Families Forward and their Home Connect program.
So they would rent that house for,
The nonprofit would own the house. They would have an agreement with us that it will be affordable for 20 years. If it sells, then this, that, and the other happens. And then they always have a family in there who's paying
okay.
a certain amount of rent. I believe that their rental amount per month is about $500 that they ask families to pay.
And so they presumably have income, and do we maintain or does the nonprofit maintain the property casualty insurance for the home and if there's damage to the home and, like, how does all that,
The discussions that we've had so far and the budgets that Families Forward has put together would be, they take 100% ownership of property management, maintenance, repairs, everything. We are completely done.
We
okay,
turn everything over to Families Forward.
Correct.
okay, okay,
And the only reason we would ever be back at the table is if, like Jill mentioned, the nonprofit fails and the houses need to go somewhere else. So we would have to build contingencies in for if that scenario happens.
I think I heard you mention that after 20 years, they can sell the property?
That I don't know, but we are required that they are affordable at the 50% AMI and under level for 20 years to
Okay.
be compliant with the US Treasury.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
One quick question on that phase two. So we're looking at buying houses that are under tax sale to then put into this program?
Not houses,
Lots.
vacant lots.
Vacant
Okay, because that
lots.
says 50 to 30 homes. I'm like, so we're just gonna displace
Oh,
people that can't pay their taxes to
Yeah,
then?
no.
Okay.
Homes as in, we're gonna build them.
Thought maybe there was a better way to do
No,
that.
no.
Okay.
That there is a long-term conversation about a mechanism where houses or vacant lots that are at tax sale risk, if there's a mechanism where they can go into an organization such as a land trust instead of just being sold. But that's kind of a separate
That's a
and
different
long-term conversation from this. Okay, so in addition
luck.
to the single-family home initiative, the board had approved in concept, providing $3 million towards the purchase price of the Holiday Inn downtown to support the Greater Des Moines Supportive Housing Organization. They will be rehabbing the hotel from 251 hotel rooms into 160 studio apartments. This is, they categorize this as kind of permanent supportive housing, but not in the formal HUD definition. They will be utilizing 40 project-based vouchers and going through centralized intake for 40 units of those as well, and we'll be charging a sliding scale of rent for those folks. They'll have on-site wraparound services for all residents, and they, it sounds like are gonna be purchasing, like the purchase agreement has gone through, and they are looking to begin rehab in the fall of 2025. Any questions about that project?
I see it announced yesterday they were moving forward with the purchase, with the closing in April. So, it looks like all speed ahead
Yep.
on that.
Thank God.
Yeah, that was close, yeah.
And similar to what the conversation about Melissa, the question that I've been asking RSM to weigh in officially on is how we just document if there is a property, you know, if this property, it has some units that are above 50% AMI, how do we write our funding agreement to make sure that our funding, in this case, $3 million towards the purchase price, is directed specifically to those units. So just making sure that everything is in alignment with the US Treasury rules, and that's what, again, what I'm asking you all to do is just kind of approve the projects in theory and then work through the details so that I can present a formal funding agreement that's been approved by our external auditor.
Yeah, because I did read that the average, or the maximum to qualify that you can earn is $47,000 per year for an apartment in the, what will be the Holiday Inn, the new Holiday Inn. And so, I wondered about the AMI, the 50% AMI, where that would fall.
Yeah, I'd have to look up,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know those
I
incomes by
don't
heart.
either.
So moving on, as I mentioned, the only funds that I believe we've spent other than the nominal expenses with the single-family homes is the $500,000 that the board committed last year to Urbandale, helping them demolish the Econo Lodge. Their plan for that site is 50 to 55 units of affordable units, but they have not started that work or even selected a development at this point. But that was why we chose to use the interest earnings for that project, because we thought that at the time it was critical that we expand some of these investments into communities outside the city of Des Moines. The next project that was approved by the board in December was the purchase of an eightplex apartment complex at 2419 Cottage Grove, and it consists of 6 two-bedroom and 2 one-bedroom units. The listing price for that was $675,000. And we've gone through, with all of these purchases, the county attorney's office has put together a procedure for how we proceed in purchasing properties as a county entity, and it mainly, and Dominic, chime in if you want, but it mainly comprises of making sure we get an appraisal, make sure we get an up-to-date inspection, and then going through the purchase agreement process like we would with any real estate deal. So the appraisal's been done, the inspection's been done. We're going through a few more due diligence items, but that purchase agreement is ready for your approval on the February 11th agenda. And again, the concept is to transfer ownership of that at some point in the next year to Families Forward, or if any other nonprofit entities come forward that have the ability to house individuals that meet this criteria and provide case management, we would consider them as well.
On that particular unit, are the 8 individual, are the 8 units rented today, or are they?
4 of them are currently rented.
And who will rent the additional 4 on behalf of the county then, while we're managing this unit for a year?
And
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate that we would engage in any kind of property management or getting more people on board. I think we would wait to fill those until we have our nonprofit partner on board, and they would be responsible for being the landlord once we donate that property to them.
Because we want to be, they have to be case managed.
Right, right. Almost everything that we're trying to do here is associated with some level of case management to ensure that we're getting families and individuals into these units that will take care of them, that are able to, you know, continue building their income ability and being.
But if we buy it and we don't donate it for a year, would those be empty for a year, or would they be managed right away?
Well, we would have to manage the 4 that are currently in there, but I mean, this is a topic for discussion. None of these details have been decided. You know, I wouldn't recommend that we fill them with additional renters. I would recommend that we find a nonprofit partner as soon as possible to transition ownership to.
Would that be Families Forward? Would they be willing to
Yep.
take this one on?
They've submitted a budget for that.
Oh, they have?
Yes,
So they already know about it?
yes.
Okay.
You know, the 4 units that are occupied, their lease terms probably end at different times, but would end within that year. Could be.
they all end in August or September.
Okay.
Okay, so the next slide is just a summary of what I've talked about, what was all officially approved kind of in concept in December by the board. Again, the Urbandale Econo Lodge, the Community Land Trust, that was a conversation that we had with the board about a new nonprofit that's being formed. The city of Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Polk County have been at the table in kind of helping create an advisory committee for that. Their board of directors has met once, and we're proposing to use $50,000 from those interest earnings to support the operational expenses in getting that new nonprofit up and running and able to function as a standalone community land trust that would be capable of accepting houses, properties, things that we're talking about here. And that would be, that work in standing up that nonprofit is going to be facilitated by Home Inc. So you will see that on your agenda next Tuesday as well. Again, Greater Des Moines Supportive Housing. The board also voted to provide $1 million in assistance to Anawim for repairs on their scattered site model. I believe there was 60 units that needed upgrades in order to maintain affordability. And then purchase of the Cottage Grove property, and then the 2 phases of single-family infill. So all of those projects totals $10.7 million and get us an additional 244 affordable units.
From looking at this list from Anwin down, those are all future decisions that this board would make. Am I reading that right?
correct. The purchase is, was kind of approved in theory in December, but has not been executed yet of Cottage Grove. The single-family homes on the initial 7 lots, those are pretty well in flight. We'd have to pull the RFP public hearing from the schedule, but the second phase of infill, where are we at on those? Yeah, okay.
So with the information that was presented in December for the decisions to move forward, can you get that to Jill and I so we can
Of course.
see that information, get a better understanding of
Yep.
how this was presented and kind of get so we can get our thoughts around it?
Of course. So moving forward, that leaves us with approximately $4.9 million in actual ERA 2 funds, and then the 2.5 to 3 million in interest earnings. And what I've been doing over the last month or so is just hearing from other projects and proposals. I think some of the board members have had conversations with organizations who are interested in putting forward a proposal. So what I've got listed here is projects that I've had very informal meetings with. These are very high level ideas. Again, the idea is to present you with a high level idea. Is this the direction you want to go with this money? And should I start nailing down the details on these or not? The first is Goldfinch Lofts, and that is taking place on 3422 Ingersoll Avenue. Cutler Development is responsible for this project. They will have 28 total units with a commercial ground floor, and 10 units of that, those 28 being at 50% AMI or less. They're also applying for LIHTC funding for this, and it will be the first ever carbon neutral certified LIHTC project, so they're very excited about that. They also have Anawim providing property management and supportive services baked into their operating expense budget. So any ERA 2 funding that goes towards this project will not go towards Anawim in any way, shape, or form, since we've already provided extensive support for them. Urban Dreams is looking to build some single-family housing at their property that they own at 1411 and through 1419 7th Street. It's currently vacant. Very, very high-level concepts so far show that they can build up to 10 units on that site, and all of them would support renters at 50% AMI, and they'd be up to 3 bedrooms per unit, so it would be supporting family. The very high-level cost estimates that I got from them are between $2 and $2.5 million to develop that site, and they're requesting $1 million from these funds.
I'm glad to see the next subject, because I did bring some information I was gonna pass on, so.
Okay, I got that too. The next one is Community Housing Initiative. They have affordable housing scattered throughout the state, and are very successful in how they run their property management and supportive services pieces of their business. And they are proposing a 48-unit senior living, I guess, complex in the Merle Hay neighborhood. They had land that was donated to them, and they're requesting ERA 2 funds that would support their pre-development activities that they have estimated at $702,000. And this project would have a mix of 50% AMI, 80% AMI, and market rate. So again, this is a conversation that I would need to have if you're supportive of this project with RSM, in terms of making sure that the funds that we would allocate for pre-development are specific to the 50% AMI units. Another property that Carl, our in-house realtor, has looked at is at 4004 University Avenue. It's another 8-plex that has 7 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units. It was built in 1979, so there's no lead paint or asbestos or serious deferred maintenance. This one is just in the very beginning stages of exploration. So next steps for this would include a letter of intent to make an offer, doing the appraisal, and then having a professional inspection before we put together a purchase offer for your consideration. Again, this would be proposed to be turned over, donated to Families Forward or another nonprofit that is interested in providing property management and case management to folks living there. This one, Sorority House on University Avenue, is very, very high level. I have a meeting scheduled with the Beacon, but essentially this is a new construction home sorority house that's available that has 23 bedrooms. You know, I've had a couple conversations with nonprofit partners, and everyone kind of seems to think that this is the kind of property that would be best suited for providing affordable housing for women who are looking to escape domestic violence. So I do have a meeting scheduled with the Beacon to see if they're even remotely interested in having the conversation. So this one is just a huge question mark still, but.
So one of the, one of my concerns as it relates to these projects or the proposed future projects is the concentration of these projects in a particular area of town. And what I'd like to see is, we met with today, we've received a request from Clive, who have a track of census tract that supports a lot of new immigrants and refugee families and low-income families that is aging out, and they want us to look at a proposed project with them for rehabbing some of those existing to keep affordability. And I think, we owe it to our community as a county to look at how we can provide affordable housing throughout the whole community, as opposed to just the city of Des Moines. And so I'm willing to look at any of these future projects, but my sense is that Goldfinch Lofts is going to get built. My sense is Urban Dreams is not a long-term builder of property, and this is out of their skill set, in my opinion. This community housing initiative is intriguing only because of the 50% AMI, but they are for-profit organization, and then I have continued heartburn on the whole adding these 6-plexes and 8-plexes and the challenges that come with property management if we don't have a partner on board ready to go day one. I mean, we've already taken on through general services all of these properties throughout our behavioral health organization, and I understand we're renting those properties and they're providing disability services for individuals, but again, is this the business we want to be in as a county? I think we need to have that discussion. Again, all of these projects sound great. I guess my big concern is, where are we going? What's our direction? And do we have the right partners, and do we have the capacity? And are we geographically spreading these projects in across the county for the whole county that's trying to achieve affordability?
I would have completely, you captured my comments too on the representation of the entire county and the four corners of it, and also the concern about ownership and being a landlord for an interim amount of time, and the responsibility coming in. Just the concern with buying real property and holding it is the other concern, but you captured my comments.
I would love to see affordable housing in all of our 17 communities in Polk County. And if they want it, they need to bring it to us. I think these are just some of the organizations that have brought, I think she's got Eclipse on here, which is in Johnston, Starts right here. I don't know anything about the Morro Hay Tower, but there's other organizations. I'd be more than happy. Does Ankeny want a 50-unit complex? for
Well,
affordable
I mean, we look at the
housing,
infills.
I'd love to see it.
I mean, the infill is where we have Public Works driving around looking for, expending time away from Public Works, you know, what they need to be focused on, looking for tax sales. I mean, there are tax sales throughout the entire county. So
We
I don't
have a
think we're
list.
asking cities to, you know, identify tax sales for us. So the infill 1 and 2. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on these larger projects, but the infill projects, I mean, those seem to be something that can be countywide as opposed to, you know, that. And again, the tax sale, we should be able to just go straight to the treasurer's office and pull and do the due diligence on, and concerned about, you know, doing our due diligence on the research of the contamination and all of that, of the lots. To me, it's just like, you know, I've been here, I think Jill said, what, a month and 3 days. This was decided before our time. It's a matter of getting comfortable with it, getting understanding of it, and how many resources have we allocated to it, not knowing whether or not I support it, Jill supports it, or the majority of the board supports it. So it's just here, we just need to move slowly, because again, a lot of this is new. I don't know much about these organizations, and there is a concern about owning real property. And I understand the county attorney's office is also represented. They have some concern about how we're proceeding too with this. So it sounds like they've addressed it. I just want to move cautiously. I know we've got, this is what we refer to as free money from the federal government, and we have to expend it by a certain amount of time, but we need to make sure that we're collectively in agreement on how we're going to move forward. And maybe the path forward looks differently, and here we are a month and a couple days into it, and this is the first we're hearing of. So there might be a different direction we want to go here on some of this stuff, and it may not be either.
Yeah, I just hope you get acquainted with the process and get comfortable with what you need to be comfortable with. Ask Sarah or Frank, whatever the questions that you need, or, you know, but we do have to move. Otherwise, the money's going back to the treasury. And, you know, I'm sure the president will figure out what to do with it. He's
Not
got lots of
necessarily a bad
ideas.
thing if it were to go back to the treasury. I mean, it's not good for our region, but again,
No.
the money has to come from somewhere, and if, you know, if we can't expend every dollar of it, some of it goes back because we can't agree on a project, that's what it is.
That'd be a shame.
Just to address a couple of the concerns, I agree with finding sites countywide. I know, Brett, if you want to talk a little bit about, I know that there was a lot of work put in to trying to find lots outside of the city of Des Moines. Do you want to speak to that briefly?
Brett Van de Loon, Public Works Director. So in my past role as planning manager, we deal with the tax sale lots, real estate, processing those. So all the lots that we've researched are the ones that we either hold because we acquired them through tax sale many years ago and that are buildable, or that are available through ones that have not been redeemed through multiple years of tax sale. So that's a process that our office does. So we utilize that list to identify these lots, and we have it GIS mapped. We identified all the lots that were available and basically vetted those lots to determine which ones were the most buildable. But as far as regionally, the concentration of buildable lots was entirely within the city limits of Des Moines. We looked outside. There was 1 or 2 in unincorporated, but they weren't served by sanitary sewer, so we don't want to put a rental house on septic. And so we did look through all of that for opportunities for other lots, and then we also explored a couple of other possibilities of projects that would have provided for these funds to be used, you know, outside of the city limits. But just to answer that specific question, we utilized the resources that we already had, which was the tax sale lots GIS mapped, both ones that we own and ones that were available that had been unredeemed through the original tax sale process, and that's how we identified the lots. And so now, once we identified the ones that are still going through the process, we began that acquisition process, because our objective is to get them and move them through our normal process. Through this one, we don't want to acquire a bunch more lots that then we have to maintain and take care of in perpetuity.
And your comment about not wanting to put rental units on a septic, what's that based on? Just the maintenance of the septic? And
Yeah,
less
just
maintenance?
the impact on the septic, that you don't know what's going into down the drain, and they're probably, you know, they can just as quickly wreck a septic.
But there are a considerable amount of septics in unincorporated Polk County, right?
Yeah.
Just to eliminate that seems kind of arbitrary, especially if we're going to be getting it. I mean, you may.
It was also the added cost. So you're adding the implementation of a septic system onto the cost of building the new house as well. It's not that we could, and there were two. I mean, and we're in the process of acquiring those lots anyway. We just didn't identify them as ones for this process.
In our tax sales, we're only looking at vacant land. We're not looking at any tax sales that have some kind of structure, which obviously perhaps one could say it's at a tax sale, there may be some deferred maintenance to it.
The only ones that we are legally able to look at are vacant land or abandoned properties that are suitable for residential use.
And I think that's where the longer-term conversation unrelated to ERA two is with the community land trust, is a mechanism where all of those countywide can be considered for donation to the community land trust. We tried to avoid, in the early conversations about this, we talked about rehab, and I think everyone kind of came to the general consensus that every single property, we just don't know what we're getting into. I think that's why we lean towards the vacant infill lots. We know that we've got a house plan that will fit on all these lots, so it's literally copy paste. And the concern or the worry with properties that had structures on them was that we just wouldn't know what we were getting into until we got into it. One could be $20,000 worth of rehab, and another could be tear it down and start over. So just because of the time constraint and spending the money, we were trying to go with the solution that was the most clear cut.
I wanted to add one other thing, that I looked at every lot that was for sale by any means in Polk County. And I talked to David Jones, and I talked to the city of West Des Moines, and when we're looking at lots outside of Des Moines, it can be $50,000 up to $100,000 for the lot itself, and the numbers just don't work as well. We are absolutely committed to trying to find things in other parts, but it's harder to justify spending $100,000 for a lot to build a $200,000 home, and so the infill is great, but it's just not available hardly anywhere but Des Moines, because the developers buy everything, or you do not get them through tax sale because they have a higher value and people don't give them up. So it's very hard to find.
So, one of the challenges, and I think one of the things I've thought about is, as it relates to expending the funds and making sure we commit to these funds, these projects are projects that we can do. This is not an exclusive list. I mean, some of the funds could be expended to buying down tax credits for projects that are coming off of the tax credit status. In other words, projects that are at the end of their 20-year life that have had AMI requirements for providing low-income housing. We could extend those credits with this money and create even more housing long-term if they were moving from low-income housing to low-income housing to market rate, and we could extend those. So this isn't the only way. I question whether these individual homes, these single-family homes that we would be building, in the process of building these, and the cost and the staff time and everything that's associated with that, is getting us the biggest bang for our buck in spending $10 million? Or would we be better off finding those projects that are coming off of the end of life on a tax credit and extending the life of those projects and buying down, where you're getting 50, 60, 70 units that you're going to extend for another 10, 15, 20 years, the life of that tax credit project.
20 years. I mean, there are 20 years of structure that people have known, that's where that is. It's
Yes.
supported. So yeah, I like that
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah, so and in terms of the, in terms of Clive coming to us today, they've come to us today, they have an affordable housing tract that is very, very low income area of the Clive community. West Des Moines has similar tracts in and around the Valley Junction area, as well as they've got some land back behind Jordan House that meets that tract area as well. So I think we've got to look at other options, and I think it's great that we're having this discussion, and you know, I don't think we would ever be in a situation where we'd run out of ideas on how to expend the money by, it has to be, obligated by September. So obligating it between now and September, we've got time, and I think we can have these discussions. So I appreciate everybody's participation today, and we've learned a lot, and I think we've got more to discuss.
Thanks, Sarah.
So thanks,
Sarah,
everybody.
I think
Yeah,
Sarah.
just a couple
Thank you.
more quick comments. Your comments earlier about Goldfinch lofts and that happening anyways, I agree. The only piece of added information I would give you is the city of Des Moines, I think, is agreeing to contribute $300,000 to assist in getting that project off the ground. I share your concerns about the Urban Dreams project. I'm not sure that they're poised to get that off the ground to the level that we need it to by the time that we're required to spend those funds. So just as immediate, and I also agree with the comments about buying down affordability on the LIHTC properties that are set to go to market rate. That had always been kind of in our queue as the last resort. The reason that we, again, really went down this single-family road home was because of, at the time we were having these conversations, the list of families at risk of homelessness was just growing exponentially. So at that time, it was let's bite off something that will really impact that particular list instead of, you know, this giant housing crisis that we're seeing in general. In terms of next steps, you'll see on February 11th next week the approval to extend RSM's contract. They'll be billing us at an hourly rate not to exceed $25,000 by the end of the year. And again, that's just providing an added layer of written verification that we're interpreting the rules and compliance correctly. In addition to the county attorney reviewing all of those. It sounds like there's a lot more conversation that needs to happen before we talk about approving any kind of additional concepts and directing staff to move forward on any of these projects. I'll wait for your direction on that, Frank. And then the next step would be drafting funding agreements for all approved projects. I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, but the projects that were approved in December, are those all going forward and these are the ones up for conversation, or I'll need direction on that. But I'm hoping to approve funding agreements by the end of March or April so that there's enough time to truly execute all the things that need to be done in terms of reporting to the Treasury. The only other possible proposals that I've heard outside of the ones that were discussed today is Ellipsis, which would help with affordable rental for youth who are transitioning out of foster care. Starts right here, affordable housing for at-risk youth, and Merle Hay Tower, affordable senior housing. Those are all conversations that I've heard but not received an official proposal on. So I'll just await direction on which projects to move forward on and which need what else to go take a look at.
Okay.
And I think these will all likely be eligible for more discussion. So probably more forums like this to discuss what we want to do as we get more information.
I look forward to getting the background information from December 2, so thank you.